The courtroom smelled of old wood and cold judgment, the kind that seeps into your skin before a single word is spoken. And as Mara Collins stepped inside with her worn handbag clutched tight against her chest, every eye seemed to measure her worth in silence, the whispers starting almost immediately as people noticed her plain dress, the scuffed shoes, the tired posture of a woman who had not slept properly in years, and the childlike tremble she fought to keep from her hands. Because this wasn't just any court day. This was the day her entire life would be, weighed by strangers who had already decided she was unworthy. The opposing counsel smirked openly, a sharp-suited man whose confidence came from knowing the room favored him, while Mara's ex-in-laws sat behind him with crossed arms and smug expressions, their wealth obvious in tailored clothes and polished watches. And when the judge entered and the room rose, Mara rose too, feeling smaller than ever, like a shadow trying not to exist. The accusations began quickly, delivered with polished cruelty, words like irresponsible, unstable, and unfit thrown at her, as if they were facts carved in stone, not assumptions built on gossip and money. The lawyer's voice was smooth as oil as he painted a picture of Mara as a struggling single mother who couldn't possibly provide a stable future for her son. He gestured dramatically toward her worn appearance, subtly letting the jury notice her hands, her shoes, her lack of polish. And people did notice. Mara felt it like needles in her back. The courtroom laughed softly when the lawyer mentioned her working multiple jobs, as if survival itself was something to mock. And when Mara was asked to speak, her voice shook at first, not because she was weak, but because the weight of being misunderstood for years had finally pressed against her throat. She explained how she worked nights and mornings, how she skipped meals so her son could eat better, how she walked miles when buses were too expensive. But her words felt like they vanished into the air before reaching anyone's heart. The judge listened but remained unreadable. The opposing lawyer pounced on every pause, every tremor, suggesting she was emotionally unstable. Someone even whispered pathetic from the gallery, and Mara lowered her gaze, not in shame but to steady herself, because inside her chest something old and powerful stirred, something she had kept hidden not out of deceit, but out of survival, a memory of promises made long ago, of a man who believed in her when no one else did. The lawyer then introduced evidence meant to destroy her credibility, showing bank statements that made her look poor, letters that made her seem desperate, while conveniently ignoring the truth behind them. The humiliation peaked when he asked mockingly, "Do you have any assets at all? Ms. Collins, or just excuses?" And the courtroom chuckled again. Mara felt her face burn, but instead of shrinking, she inhaled deeply, because this was the moment she had prepared for in silence for years. The moment she had prayed would never come, but knew eventually would. She glanced at the judge and said quietly, "Yes, Your Honor, I do." And the lawyer laughed outright, waving a dismissive hand. "Then by all means, enlighten us," he said, confident this was the end of her. And Mara reached into her worn handbag slowly, every movement deliberate, the room growing quieter with each second. She removed a single envelope, thick, aged, sealed, and held it up. And though no one knew it yet, that envelope carried the weight of truth, sacrifice, and a secret asset powerful enough to shatter every lie spoken that day. And before she revealed it, before the room erupted, remember this moment. Because stories like this remind us why resilience matters. And if you want more stories that expose hidden strength and shocking justice, make sure you subscribe to this channel now, because what happens next changes everything. Chapter 2. The envelope felt heavier than paper should, as if every year of silence, every tear Mara swallowed, every night she went to bed hungry, so her son could eat, had somehow settled inside it. And when she placed it on the evidence table, the courtroom leaned forward as one body, curiosity replacing mockery. The judge adjusted his glasses and asked for the document to be presented, and the opposing lawyer's smile faltered for the first time as he took the envelope, clearly annoyed, clearly unprepared, and as he opened it, the color drained from his face in slow disbelief. Inside were notarized documents, legal certifications, and a letter bearing a name that caused an audible gasp across the room. Because the letter was from Samuel Whitmore, the late industrialist philanthropist whose foundation funded hospitals, schools, and legal reforms nationwide. A man whose estate was worth hundreds of millions, and whose signature was unmistakable. The lawyer stammered as he read. The judge demanded silence, and Mara finally spoke with calm strength, explaining that years ago, before her marriage fell apart, before her life unraveled, she had worked as a private caregiver for Mr. Whitmore during his final illness. She had been there when others saw him as just a fortune. She had listened to his fears, protected his dignity, and honored his wishes when even his own family neglected him. And in gratitude, he had created a legal trust, naming her as a silent partner and guardian beneficiary, not for personal luxury, but for educational and social investment. A trust she was forbidden to disclose publicly until certain conditions were met, one of which was legal challenge to her guardianship rights. The room exploded into whispers as the judge reviewed the documents, confirming their authenticity, confirming that Mara was not just financially secure, but the managing trustee of a fund larger than the combined assets of her ex-in-laws. The lawyer tried to object, but his voice cracked, because the truth had flipped the power dynamic entirely. Mara continued, explaining that she had lived modestly by choice, believing that character mattered more than appearance, that teaching her son humility was worth more than flaunting wealth. The judge looked at her with new respect, the jury with shame, and the ex-in-laws with panic, because the narrative they built had collapsed. The judge ruled decisively, not only denying their claims, but granting Mara full custody and legal protection from further harassment, citing malicious intent and attempted character assassination. And as the gavel struck, Mara exhaled for the first time in years. The courtroom that once mocked her now stood silent, some avoiding her gaze, others staring in awe. But Mara didn't smile. She simply turned and walked out with quiet dignity, knowing that her true victory wasn't the money or the judgment, but the truth finally seen. And outside the courthouse, sunlight hit her face as if welcoming her back to the world. She thought of her son waiting at home, unaware that his future had just been secured not by wealth, but by his mother's strength. And as this story reminds us, never underestimate someone just because they walk softly or wear worn shoes. Hidden strength often belongs to those who suffer in silence. And if this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you to never judge a book by its cover, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel, because more powerful stories of justice, resilience, and shocking truth are coming, and you won't want to miss them.